Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her scope one final time as the Afghan sun began its descent behind the jagged mountains. The wind had been playing tricks on her all afternoon, but she had learned to read its patterns like a familiar book. 3 tours in Afghanistan had taught her that patience was a sniper's greatest weapon, even more valuable than the Barrett M82 rifle that had become an extension of her body. The intelligence briefing had been straightforward: a high-value target would be moving through the valley at sunset, accompanied by local insurgents. What the briefing hadn't mentioned was the group of foreign mercenaries who had been systematically hunting American snipers across the region. Maria's spotter, Corporal James Mitchell, had picked up chatter about them on intercepted communications, but their commanding officer had dismissed it as rumors. Maria came from a family of hunters in rural Montana. Her father had taught her to shoot when she was 8 years old, starting with tin cans and graduating to elk by the time she was 12. The Army had refined her natural talent, turning her into one of the most feared snipers in her unit. She had 43 confirmed kills, each one a terrorist who would never again threaten innocent lives. The valley below stretched for 2 miles, a natural corridor that insurgents used to move supplies and personnel between villages. Maria's hide was positioned on a rocky outcrop that provided perfect concealment and an unobstructed view of the entire route. She had been in position since before dawn, moving only to adjust her aim or take sips of water from her hydration system. Mitchell lowered his binoculars and whispered into his radio. "Overwatch, this is Eagle Eye. Target convoy approaching from the north. 4 vehicles, approximately 16 personnel." The response crackled back immediately, confirming the mission was still active and authorizing engagement when the opportunity presented itself. As the convoy approached, Maria noticed something that made her blood run cold. Through her scope, she could see that one of the vehicles carried men who were clearly not local insurgents. Their equipment was too advanced, their movements too coordinated. These were professionals, and they were scanning the hills with military precision. One of them carried a rifle that looked remarkably similar to her own. The convoy stopped directly below their position. Maria held her breath as the foreign operatives began deploying in a pattern she recognized from her own training. They were setting up a counter-sniper operation. Somehow, they knew she was there. Mitchell's eyes widened as he watched the scene unfold through his spotting scope. "Santos, we need to move, now." But Maria was already calculating distances and wind speed. If they tried to retreat, they would be exposed on the rocky slope behind them. Their only chance was to complete the mission and eliminate the threat before the hunters became the hunted. The first shot came from a ridge, 800 meters to their east. The bullet struck the rock inches from Maria's head, sending granite fragments flying. She didn't flinch. Years of combat had taught her that panic was death. Instead, she smoothly rotated her rifle toward the source of the shot while Mitchell called in their situation to base. "Contact, contact. We are under fire from multiple positions. Requesting immediate extraction and close air support." The radio crackled with static before their commander's voice came through, tense but controlled. "Eagle Eye, extraction team is 30 minutes out. You need to hold your position until they arrive." Maria spotted the muzzle flash from the enemy sniper just as he fired his second shot. This one was closer, striking the dirt beside her elbow. She could see him now, a bearded man in desert camouflage with a rifle that appeared to be a custom-built precision weapon. He was good, but he had made a critical mistake by revealing his position. The distance was challenging. Nearly 900 meters with a crosswind that kept shifting direction. Maria controlled her breathing, feeling her heart rate slow as she entered the focused state that had kept her alive through countless engagements. The target was partially concealed behind rocks, but she could see enough of his torso to make the shot. Mitchell fed her wind readings, while keeping watch for additional threats. Wind 3 to 5 miles per hour from the southwest. Target is stationary. Maria made her final adjustments, placing her crosshairs precisely where she calculated the bullet would need to strike. The Barrett roared, and through her scope, Maria saw the enemy sniper's body jerk backward before disappearing behind the rocks. One down, but she could see movement from at least 2 other positions. The hunters had become a coordinated kill team, and she was their primary target. A second shot rang out from a different direction, this one from nearly a kilometer away. The bullet passed so close to Maria's head that she could feel the displacement of air. These weren't ordinary mercenaries. They were elite operators with training that matched her own. Mitchell spotted the second shooter and began calling out his position when a third shot struck him in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him tumbling down the slope. Maria watched in horror as her spotter rolled behind a large boulder, clutching his wounded arm. She was now alone against multiple expert marksmen, who knew exactly where she was positioned. The radio crackled with urgent transmissions as their base tried to coordinate support, but Maria knew that help was still too far away. The extraction team wouldn't arrive in time, and close air support was grounded due to weather conditions in the area. She would have to eliminate the remaining threats by herself or risk being overrun by the kill squad that was already moving to flank her position. Maria looked through her scope at the valley where the convoy had stopped. The remaining insurgents were taking cover, but the foreign operatives were advancing up the slope with tactical precision. They moved like a well-oiled machine, using cover and concealment while maintaining overlapping fields of fire. These men had obviously done this before, hunting snipers who had become too effective for their operations. The sun was setting rapidly, and darkness would favor the attackers who had superior numbers. Maria had perhaps 15 minutes of good light remaining, and she would need every second of it to turn the tables on her hunters. She had spent her entire military career protecting others, but now she would have to fight for her own survival against enemies who were just as skilled and determined as she was. Maria forced herself to think like her father had taught her during those long hunting trips in the Montana wilderness. When you're outnumbered, you don't fight fair. You use every advantage the terrain gives you, and you make every shot count because you might not get a second chance. She could hear Mitchell groaning behind the boulder where he had taken cover. His radio was still working, and she could hear him trying to coordinate with their base despite his injury. The extraction team had been delayed by mechanical problems, pushing their arrival back another 20 minutes. In a sniper duel, 20 minutes might as well be forever. The second enemy marksman was positioned on a ridge to her north, approximately 850 meters away. Maria had caught glimpses of him moving between rocks, but he was smart enough to stay concealed between shots. The third shooter was somewhere to her west, but she hadn't been able to pinpoint his exact location. What worried her most was the team of operatives who were climbing the slope directly toward her position. Maria made a decision that went against everything she had been taught about sniper tactics. Instead of staying in her carefully prepared hide, she would have to move. The kill squad knew where she was, and staying put would only make her an easy target. She began gathering her essential gear while keeping her rifle trained on the most likely approach. Roots, the sound of boots scraping against rock told her that the assault team was closer than she had estimated. Through her scope, she caught a glimpse of movement behind a cluster of boulders about 300 meters downhill. These men were advancing with the confidence of professionals, who had done this many times before. Maria's mind raced through everything she knew about counter-sniper operations. The enemy would try to fix her position with suppressing fire while their assault team moved in for the kill. They would use grenades and automatic weapons to overwhelm her single rifle. Her only chance was to break their coordination and force them to react to her moves instead of executing their plan. She aimed carefully at a loose rock formation above the advancing team and fired. The Barrett's massive bullets shattered the stone, sending an avalanche of debris tumbling down the slope. She heard shouts and curses in what sounded like Russian as the men scrambled for cover. The rockslide had bought her a few precious minutes, but it had also revealed her new position to the other snipers. A bullet struck the ground where she had been lying just seconds before. The northern sniper had adjusted his aim based on her muzzle flash. Maria rolled to her right just as another shot gouged a furrow in the dirt beside her. These men were good enough to hit a moving target at extreme range, something that required exceptional skill. Mitchell's voice came through her earpiece, weak but determined. "Santos, I can see 2 more vehicles approaching from the south. Looks like reinforcements for the bad guys. Maria's heart sank as she realized that her situation was getting worse by the minute. She was facing not just a kill squad, but an entire operation designed to eliminate her. The Western sniper finally revealed his position when he fired at her new location. Maria caught the muzzle flash through her peripheral vision and spun toward it, but he had already disappeared behind cover. These men were rotating positions after each shot, making themselves nearly impossible to target. Maria began moving down the slope in a pattern that would put her behind the advancing assault team. If she could get below them on the hillside, she would force them to expose themselves as they tried to reacquire her position. It was dangerous, but staying put was certain death. The terrain worked in her favor as she moved between boulders and scrub brush. Her father had taught her to move silently through the woods, and those lessons served her well as she repositioned herself for a flanking attack. The Barrett was heavy and awkward to carry while moving quickly, but she had practiced these movements thousands of times during training. An explosion echoed across the valley as one of the assault team members threw a grenade at her previous position. The blast sent dirt and rock fragments flying, but Maria was already 50 meters away from the impact point. She could hear the team members calling to each other in Russian, coordinating their next move. Through her scope, Maria finally got a clear view of one of the assault team members as he moved between cover points. He was wearing body armor and carrying an AK-74 with modern optical attachments. His movement was textbook perfect, the kind of tactical advancement that took years to master. But his confidence made him careless for just a moment. Maria's shot took him center mass, the massive bullet penetrating his body armor and dropping him instantly. The remaining assault team members immediately went to ground, their advance stopped by the loss of their point man. Maria could hear them shouting commands to each other, but their coordination had been disrupted. The northern sniper tried to suppress her new position with rapid fire, but his shots were going wide. Maria realized that he was shooting based on sound rather than visual contact, which meant he had lost sight of her in the gathering darkness. She used his muzzle flashes to pinpoint his exact location behind a rocky outcrop. The range was nearly 1,000 meters, at the very edge of her rifle's effective range. Maria had to account for bullet drop, wind drift, and the target's partial concealment. She took her time, controlling her breathing and waiting for the perfect moment when everything aligned. Her shot echoed across the valley like thunder. Through her scope, she saw the northern sniper's rifle spin away from his position as her bullet found its mark. 2 down, but she could still hear the assault team. Regrouping below her position, Mitchell's voice crackled through her earpiece with urgent news. Santos, drone surveillance shows at least 8 more hostiles moving up the western approach. These guys called in serious backup. Maria felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. She was facing a much larger force than intelligence had indicated. The Western sniper was still out there somewhere, and she hadn't been able to locate him since his last shot. That worried her more than the assault teams because a good sniper could pin her down while the others moved in for the kill. She needed to find him before he found her. Darkness was falling rapidly in the mountain valley, and Maria knew that her enemies probably had night vision equipment. Her thermal scope gave her some advantage, but she was still badly outnumbered. The extraction team was still 15 minutes away, and she wasn't sure she could hold out that long against professional killers who were determined to add her to their list of victims. Maria's thermal scope revealed what her naked eyes could not see in the growing darkness. Heat signatures were moving up multiple approaches to her position, and they were coordinating their advance with military precision. The Western sniper was still hidden somewhere in the rocks, but the assault teams were closing in from 3 different directions. She counted at least 10 heat signatures, all moving with the disciplined spacing of professional soldiers. These weren't local insurgents or even typical mercenaries. The way they moved, their equipment, and their tactical coordination suggested they were former special forces operators from a major military power. Mitchell managed to drag himself closer to her position despite his wounded shoulder. His face was pale from blood loss, but his eyes were still sharp. Santos, I've been monitoring their communications. They're speaking Russian, and they know your call sign? This whole thing was a setup. The realization hit Maria like a physical blow. The intelligence briefing about the high-value target had been false information designed to lure her into a trap. Someone with access to classified information had betrayed her unit, setting up what was supposed to be a routine mission as an assassination attempt. A muzzle flash erupted from the western ridge, and Maria felt the bullet pass inches from her head. The hidden sniper had finally revealed his position, and his shot placement told her everything she needed to know about his skill level. He was using her own tactics against her, waiting for the perfect moment to take his shot. Maria immediately shifted position, knowing that staying in one place after being spotted was suicide. As she moved, she heard the distinctive whistle of incoming mortar rounds. The kill squad wasn't just trying to eliminate her with small arms fire. They were bringing heavy weapons to bear on her position. The first mortar round impacted 20 meters above her position, sending rocks and dirt cascading down the slope. The second round was closer, and Maria realized they were walking their fire toward her location. She had perhaps 30 seconds before they found the range. Without hesitation, Maria began a controlled slide down the rocky slope, using her father's mountain climbing techniques to maintain her balance while carrying the heavy rifle. The mortar rounds continued to fall behind her, but she was moving faster than they could adjust their aim. The assault teams had to choose between maintaining their careful advance and pursuing a rapidly moving target. Maria heard shouted commands in Russian as they tried to coordinate their response to her unexpected maneuver. Their hesitation gave her the opening she needed to reach a more defensible position. She found cover behind a massive boulder that would protect her from the mortar fire while giving her clear lines of sight toward the advancing teams. Her ammunition was running low, with only 8 rounds remaining in her magazine and 2 spare magazines in her pack. Every shot would have to count. The thermal scope revealed 3 heat signatures moving toward her new position from the north. They were advancing in a classic fire and maneuver formation, with 2 men providing cover while the third moved forward. Maria had taught this same technique to new recruits back at Fort Bragg. She waited until the lead man was fully exposed during his movement between cover points. The Barrett roared and the massive bullet dropped him instantly. His teammates immediately went to ground, but their advance had been stopped. Maria was learning to use their professional training against them by predicting their movements. The Western sniper fired again, but his bullet struck the boulder that was protecting Maria. Rock fragments peppered her face, but she maintained her position and began scanning for his muzzle flash. He was smart enough to change positions after each shot, but thermal imaging revealed a faint heat signature moving between rocks on the western ridge. Mitchell's radio crackled with an update from their base. Eagle Eye, extraction team is 10 minutes out, but weather is degrading rapidly. They might not be able to land in these conditions. Maria felt her stomach drop as she realized that help might not arrive at. A grenade explosion to her left told her that another assault team was flanking her position. These men were persistent and professional, adapting their tactics as the situation changed. Maria counted muzzle flashes from at least 6 different positions, all converging on her location. The Western sniper made a critical mistake when he tried to take a shot at Mitchell's position. Maria caught the muzzle flash and immediately fired at the source. Her bullet struck the rocks where the sniper was concealed, and she heard a scream echo across the valley. She might not have killed him, but she had definitely wounded him. Maria's position was becoming untenable as more assault team members closed in from multiple directions. She made another tactical decision that went against conventional sniper doctrine. Instead of trying to hold her ground, she would take the fight directly to her enemies. She stripped her gear down to essential items and began moving toward the largest concentration of heat signatures. The Barrett was too heavy for close-quarters combat, so she switched to her 9 pistol while keeping the rifle slung across her back. If she was going to die on this mountain, she would make sure her enemies paid a heavy price. The assault team members were expecting her to retreat or try to find better cover. They weren't prepared for an American sniper to launch a direct attack against superior numbers. Maria used their assumptions against them as she moved through the darkness like a ghost. Her first target was a two-man team that had taken position behind a cluster of rocks. Maria approached from their blind spot, moving silently across the broken ground. When she was close enough to hear their whispered communications, she struck with lightning speed. 2 rapid pistol shots dropped both men before they could react. Maria immediately moved to their position and recovered an AK-74 with night vision scope and several magazines of ammunition. The Russian weapon was familiar to her from training exercises, and it gave her the firepower she needed for close combat. The remaining assault team members realized that their prey had become a predator, and Maria could hear them trying to regroup in the darkness. Their radio communications had become frantic as they struggled to understand how a single American sniper had turned the tables on their carefully planned Operation. Mitchell's voice came through her earpiece with urgent news. Santos, thermal imaging from base shows vehicle movement in the valley. Looks like they're trying to bring up more reinforcements or possibly escape routes. Maria realized that her enemies were preparing for either victory or retreat, which meant she had very little time to eliminate the remaining threats. The sound of rotor blades echoed through the valley, but Maria couldn't tell if it was their extraction helicopter or enemy reinforcements. The weather was deteriorating rapidly, with clouds moving in to obscure the mountains. Whatever happened next would happen in the next few minutes. The helicopter sound grew louder, and Maria's heart raced as she tried to determine if it was friend or foe. Through her thermal scope, she could see the remaining assault team members taking defensive positions, which suggested they weren't expecting friendly air support. The aircraft had to be the American extraction team. Maria keyed her radio and spoke in an urgent whisper. "Overwatch, this is Eagle Eye. I have multiple hostiles in the immediate area. Do not attempt landing until I clear the LZ." She couldn't risk having the extraction helicopter shot down by the remaining kill squad members who were still hunting her in the darkness. The sound of the approaching aircraft seemed to galvanize the remaining Russian operatives. Maria could hear shouted commands as they attempted to coordinate one final assault on her position before the Americans arrived. They knew that once close air support arrived, their mission would become impossible. A cluster of heat signatures began moving rapidly up the slope toward her position. Maria counted at least 4 men advancing in a coordinated rush, hoping to overwhelm her with speed and firepower before she could respond effectively. They were betting everything on this final attack. Maria had positioned herself in a natural choke point where the rocky terrain would force the attackers to expose themselves. She waited until the lead man was clearly visible through her thermal scope before opening fire with the captured AK-74. The automatic weapon's rapid fire dropped 2 of the attackers immediately. The remaining 2 men went to ground and began returning fire, their muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness. Maria rolled to a new position as bullets sparked off the rocks around her. These final 2 operatives were the most skilled members of the kill squad, and they weren't going to be easy to eliminate. One of them began laying down suppressing fire, while his partner attempted to flank Maria's position. She recognized the tactic and was ready for it, but executing a defense against professional soldiers required perfect timing. She waited until the flanking operative was committed to his movement before engaging. Her burst of automatic fire caught the flanking soldier in the open, but her celebration was cut short by the distinctive crack of a sniper rifle. The wounded Western sniper was still active, and his shot passed close enough to her head that she felt the bullet's wake. He was firing from a new position, probably using a backup rifle. The helicopter was now circling the valley, its searchlight probing the mountainside. Maria could see the aircraft clearly through her thermal scope, a UH-60 Black Hawk with door gunners visible at the side windows. The cavalry had arrived, but they needed her to mark friendly and enemy positions. Maria activated her infrared strobe, a device that would be invisible to the naked eye but clearly visible to the helicopter crew's night vision equipment. The signal would identify her position to the friendly aircraft while remaining hidden from her enemies. The remaining assault team member made a desperate charge toward her position, firing his weapon on full automatic as he advanced. Maria met his attack with precise shots from her AK-74, dropping him just 10 meters from her cover. The main assault team had been eliminated, but the sniper was still out there. The Black Hawk's door gunner opened fire on the western ridge where Maria had last seen the enemy sniper's muzzle flash. The heavy machine gun rounds tore chunks out of the rocky outcrop, forcing the sniper to abandon his position or risk being torn apart by the devastating firepower. Mitchell dragged himself closer to Maria's position, his face pale but his eyes bright with determination. Santos, base is reporting that they've intercepted communications suggesting this was a contract job. Someone paid these Russians specifically to eliminate you. The implications of Mitchell's words sent a chill through Maria's blood. This hadn't been a random encounter or even a military operation. Someone had specifically targeted her for assassination, using professional killers who had studied her methods and prepared specifically to counter her abilities. The helicopter pilot's voice crackled through her radio. Eagle Eye, this is Dustoff 27. We have you marked with IR strobe. Can you confirm area secure for landing? Maria scanned the surrounding terrain through her thermal scope, looking for any remaining heat signatures that might indicate hidden threats. Movement on the eastern ridge caught her attention just as she was about to give the all-clear signal. The thermal signature was faint, but someone was moving through the rocks in a pattern that suggested advanced training. The kill squad had left at least one more operative in reserve, positioned to attack the extraction helicopter. Maria keyed her radio immediately. Dustoff 27, negative on secure LZ. I have at least one more hostile on the eastern ridge. Recommend you maintain altitude until I clear the threat. The helicopter pilot acknowledged and began a wide orbit around the landing zone. The final operative was the most skilled member of the entire kill squad. Maria could see him moving with the fluid grace of an expert, using the terrain to mask his approach, while maintaining perfect fields of fire on both her position and the potential landing zone. This was their ace in the hole. Maria made a decision that would have seemed suicidal to anyone watching. She broke cover and began moving directly toward the final operative's position. The only way to protect the extraction helicopter was to eliminate the threat, and that meant taking the fight to him before he could set up his attack. Her movement through the rocky terrain was as silent as her father had taught her during those hunting trips in Montana. Every step was calculated to avoid loose stones or unstable ground that might give away her position. The captured night vision scope gave her a clear advantage in the darkness. She spotted him first, a shadow moving between boulders about 200 meters above her position. He was carrying what appeared to be a rocket-propelled grenade launcher, a weapon that could easily destroy the extraction helicopter. Maria had to stop him before he could get into firing position. The range was too great for accurate fire with a K-74. So Maria unslung her Barrett rifle and prepared for what might be her most important shot of the entire engagement. The target was partially concealed and moving, making it an extremely difficult shot. Even under ideal conditions, Maria controlled her breathing and waited for the perfect moment. The operative paused behind a boulder to check his equipment, exposing just enough of his torso for a clear shot. The Barrett's massive bullet covered the distance in less than a second, striking the target center mass. The explosion that followed told Maria that her bullet had detonated either the RPG warhead or other explosives the operative had been carrying. The blast lit up the mountainside like daylight for several seconds. Confirming that the final threat had been eliminated, Maria keyed her radio with relief flooding through her voice. Dustoff 27, area is now secure for landing. All hostile threats have been neutralized. The helicopter immediately began its approach to the improvised landing zone while Maria helped Mitchell prepare for extraction. As the Black Hawk touched down in a cloud of dust and rotor wash, Maria realized that she had not only survived an expertly planned assassination attempt, but had turned the tables on her hunters completely. The kill squad that had come to eliminate her was now scattered across the mountainside, victims of the very prey they had sought to destroy. The helicopter medic immediately began working on Mitchell's shoulder wound while Maria provided security during the extraction. As the Black Hawk lifted off from the mountain valley, she could see the scattered remains of the kill squad that had tried to hunt her down. 7 professional soldiers lay dead on the mountainside, victims of their own overconfidence. During the flight back to base, Maria's mind raced with questions about who had ordered the hit and why. The fact that the attackers had known her call sign and location suggested that someone with access to classified information had betrayed her unit. The implications were staggering and potentially reached into the highest levels of military command. At the base hospital, doctors confirmed that Mitchell would make a full recovery from his shoulder wound. While he underwent surgery, Maria was debriefed by a team of intelligence officers who seemed as surprised as she was by the sophistication of the assassination attempt. They had never encountered anything like this coordinated hunt for a specific American sniper, Colonel James Harrison. The base commander called Maria into his office for a private briefing 12 hours after her extraction. His expression was grim as he closed the door and activated electronic countermeasures to prevent eavesdropping. What he had to tell her was classified at the highest levels. "Santos, what happened to you wasn't an isolated incident," Colonel Harrison began. "Intelligence has identified at least 6 similar attempts against American snipers in the past 3 months. 3 of those attempts were successful." Maria felt her blood run cold as she realized the scope of what they were facing. The colonel continued his briefing with information that painted a terrifying picture. "We believe we're dealing with a private military contractor that specializes in eliminating high-value targets. They're being paid by someone who wants to remove America's most effective snipers from the battlefield permanently." Maria studied the intelligence files that Colonel Harrison showed her. Photographs of dead American snipers, all of whom had been eliminated by highly trained kill squads using similar tactics to what she had experienced. The precision and coordination of the attacks suggested that the enemy had detailed intelligence on American sniper operations. "Sir, how are they getting our operational information?" Maria asked. "They knew my exact position and call sign. That level of intelligence suggests someone on our side is providing information to the enemy." "Colonel." Harrison's expression grew even more serious as he confirmed her worst fears. "We have reason to believe there's a mole somewhere in the intelligence chain," he said. "Someone with access to operational planning and sniper deployment schedules. The FBI and military intelligence are conducting a joint investigation, but until we identify the source, all our snipers are at risk." The colonel handed Maria new orders that would change everything about her mission in Afghanistan. "You're being reassigned to a special operations unit that will hunt down this contractor organization. Your survival against their kill squad makes you uniquely qualified to understand their tactics and capabilities." Maria felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension as she read her new assignment details. She would be working with a joint task force that included CIA operatives, Special Forces soldiers, and international intelligence agencies. Their mission was to identify and eliminate the organization that was systematically hunting American military personnel. The investigation would take her far beyond Afghanistan, following a trail of evidence that led through Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and South America. The private military contractor was apparently a sophisticated organization with connections to hostile foreign governments and international crime syndicates. Her first lead came from the equipment recovered from the dead kill squad members. The weapons were traced to an arms dealer in Bulgaria who had connections to former Soviet Special Forces personnel. Intelligence agencies were already working to identify the dealer's customers and financial backers. Mitchell was released from the hospital with his arm in a sling, but he insisted on joining Maria's new assignment despite medical recommendations. "You saved my life out there," he told her. "I'm not letting you go after these bastards without proper backup." His loyalty touched Maria deeply, but she worried about his ability to perform with a wounded shoulder. The task force commander Major Sarah Chun briefed Maria on their current intelligence regarding the contractor organization. "We call them the Reaper Network," she explained. "They've been operating for approximately 2 years, taking contracts to eliminate specific military targets. Your encounter is the first time anyone has survived one of their operations." Maria studied surveillance footage from other attack sites, looking for patterns that might help them predict future operations. The kill squads always used the same basic tactics: superior intelligence, coordinated assault teams, and professional snipers working in coordination. They were disciplined, well-equipped, and extremely effective. The breakthrough came when intelligence analysts discovered that all of the targeted American snipers had one thing in common. They had all been responsible for eliminating high-value terrorist targets within the past year. Someone was systematically removing the soldiers who had been most effective at disrupting terrorist operations. Maria realized that her own kill count had made her a priority target for the Reaper Network. Her 43 confirmed kills included several terrorist leaders and bomb makers who had been responsible for attacks on American forces. By eliminating her, the enemy could remove one of their most persistent threats. The investigation revealed that the Reaper Network was being funded by a consortium of terrorist organizations and hostile foreign governments. They were paying millions of dollars to eliminate America's most effective military personnel, weakening the country's ability to project power in critical regions. Colonel Harrison assigned Maria to a deep cover operation that would take her to Bulgaria to investigate the arms dealer who had supplied weapons to her attackers. She would pose as a private military contractor herself, seeking to make contact with the organization that had tried to kill her. The mission would be extremely dangerous, requiring her to infiltrate a network of professional killers who might recognize her from their failed operation in Afghanistan. But it was also her best chance to identify the people responsible for the deaths of her fellow snipers and prevent future attacks. Mitchell would accompany her as her spotter, despite his recent injury. Their cover story was that they were former American military personnel seeking employment with private security companies in Eastern Europe. They would carry false identification and weapons that couldn't be traced back to the United States military. As Maria prepared for the undercover mission, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just a few days. She had gone from being the hunter to being the hunted, and now she was becoming the hunter again. The kill squad that had tried to eliminate her had unknowingly created their own worst enemy. The girl who had learned to hunt elk in the Montana mountains was about to take on an international organization of professional assassins. But this time, she wouldn't be waiting in a hide for targets to present themselves. She would be walking directly into the enemy's territory, armed with nothing but her skills and the determination to avenge her fallen comrades. 3 months later, Maria Santos stood on a rooftop in Sofia, Bulgaria, with her rifle trained on a warehouse where the arms dealer Viktor Petrov was meeting with representatives of the Reaper Network. The undercover operation had been a complete success, leading her deep into the heart of the organization that had tried to kill her. Mitchell's shoulder had healed completely, and he was back to his full capabilities as her spotter. Through careful intelligence work and assuming false identities, they had managed to infiltrate the network of contractors and arms dealers who supported assassination operations against American military personnel. The warehouse below contained not just weapons, but intelligence files on dozens of American snipers who were marked for elimination. Maria had seen her own photograph among the targets, along with detailed information about her tactics, equipment, and deployment history. The scope of the conspiracy was larger than anyone had imagined. "Overwatch, this is Angel 7, Maria whispered into her radio. "Target building contains multiple high-value targets and actionable intelligence. Request permission to proceed with operation." The response came immediately from Major Chun, who was coordinating the Joint Task Force operation from a command center in Germany. "Angel 7, you are cleared to engage. All supporting units are in position." Maria felt a surge of satisfaction as she prepared to eliminate the people who had orchestrated attacks on her fellow soldiers. This time, she would be the one setting the trap. The operation had taken months to plan and execute. Intelligence agencies from 6 different countries had contributed resources to identify and locate the core leadership of the Reaper network. Tonight's raid would simultaneously strike targets in Bulgaria, Serbia, and Ukraine, dismantling the entire organization. Through her scope, Maria could see Viktor Petrov gesturing at maps spread across a table. Beside him stood 2 men she recognized from intelligence briefings as former Russian Spetsnaz operators who had become the primary kill team leaders for the Reaper network. These were the men who had planned and executed the attacks on American snipers. Mitchell fed her wind readings and confirmed the range to target. 820 meters, wind calm, temperature dropping. Maria made her final scope adjustments while watching the targets through the warehouse windows. She had waited months for this moment of justice. The first shot shattered the warehouse window and eliminated Viktor Petrov instantly. Maria immediately shifted her aim to the second target, a bearded man who had been identified as the leader of the kill squad that had attacked her in Afghanistan. Her second shot dropped him before he could reach cover. Chaos erupted in the warehouse as the remaining targets scrambled for weapons and defensive positions. But they were facing not just a single sniper, but a coordinated assault by Special Forces teams that had surrounded the building. The hunters had become the hunted in the most complete way possible. Maria continued engaging targets through the windows while assault teams breached the warehouse doors. Her thermal scope allowed her to track enemy movement through the building's walls, guiding the assault teams to targets and helping them avoid ambush. The firefight lasted only 12 minutes, but when it was over, the core leadership of the Reaper network had been eliminated. Maria had personally accounted for 4 targets, including the men who had planned the attempt on her life. The organization that had seemed so professional and untouchable had been destroyed by the very soldiers they had tried to eliminate. Intelligence recovered from the warehouse revealed the identity of the mole who had been providing American operational information to the enemy. It was a civilian contractor working in the Pentagon who had access to sniper deployment schedules and mission briefings. The traitor was arrested within hours of the Bulgaria operation. Major Chion's voice crackled through Maria's radio with news from the other simultaneous operations. Angel 7, all targets have been neutralized. The Reaper network has been completely dismantled. Outstanding work by all units involved. Maria felt a deep sense of satisfaction as she realized that no more American snipers would die because of this. Organization. The investigation revealed that the Reaper network had been responsible for the deaths of 11 American military personnel, including 8 snipers who had been specifically targeted for their effectiveness against terrorist operations. The financial backers included terrorist organizations, drug cartels, and foreign intelligence agencies who wanted to weaken American military capabilities. Maria's survival of the original assassination attempt had been the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy. Her detailed debriefing had provided intelligence analysts with crucial information about the organization's tactics and capabilities, allowing them to identify and track other operations. Colonel Harrison personally flew to Bulgaria to debrief Maria after the successful conclusion of the operation. Santos, your actions have prevented dozens of future attacks on American personnel, he told her. The intelligence community considers this one of the most significant counterterrorism successes in recent years. Maria was awarded the Silver Star for her actions in Afghanistan and the Distinguished Service Cross for her undercover work in dismantling the Reaper network. But the recognition that meant the most to her came from the families of the snipers, who had been killed before the organization was stopped. Mitchell was promoted to sergeant and assigned as Maria's permanent spotter for future operations. Their partnership had been tested under the most extreme conditions and had proven to be unbreakable. They had become one of the most effective sniper teams in the Army's history. The warehouse raid also yielded intelligence about other private military contractors who were targeting American personnel. Maria's new assignment would involve hunting down these remaining threats, using the skills and experience she had gained from being hunted herself 6 months after the events in Afghanistan. Maria stood in the mountains of Montana visiting her father's grave. She placed her Silver Star medal on the headstone and whispered, "I used everything you taught me, Dad. The hunters never saw it coming." A cold wind blew through the pine trees, carrying with it the memory of lessons learned in these same mountains. Mitchell joined her at the gravesite, understanding without words what this moment meant to her. They stood in silence as the sun set behind the peaks where Maria had first learned to hunt. Tomorrow they would return to Afghanistan, but tonight, they honored the man who had taught her that sometimes the best way to survive being hunted is to become the hunter. The girl who had learned to shoot tin cans in these mountains had become something her father never could have imagined. She was no longer just a sniper. She was the hunter who stalked those who preyed on American soldiers, and her reputation had spread through the intelligence community like wildfire. The Reaper Network had created their own nemesis when they failed to kill Maria Santos, and their destruction served as a warning to anyone else who might consider targeting American military personnel. Maria Santos had answered the question posed. In her story's beginning, who's the hunter now? The answer was written in the dismantled remains of the organization that had tried to kill her, and in the lives of the soldiers who would never become targets because the hunters had been hunted down and eliminated forever.